Taryn?
Yeah, let's go for it.
All right, okay. Well, you are all very welcome to session 5 of 6 for the Level Up Work and Wellness program. I'll just do a quick introduction before we get started. So for those of you who are new to ITAG is a non-profit tech association that develop innovation technology along the Atlantic Gateway. So as you know, we have a thriving digital tech cluster in Galway, and ITAG nourish this tech cluster through networking events, tech talks, social events, and by hosting upskilling opportunities for leadership and future skills development. Within the ITAG forum, there are various special interest forums, of which the Digital Women's Forum is one, and that is the forum bringing today's session to you. And we also offer networking and educational opportunity programs like our mentoring program, Coaching for Success, and the Digital Women's Executive Leadership Program. And if you want any information on those, they're all available on the ITAG website. Taryn and I are both on the ITAG's Digital Women's Forum Committee, and we're so excited to have co-created this program and to host it for you over the 6 sessions. I can't believe that it's already session 5 of 6 and it's coming to an end, but we've had an amazing time putting it together and working with you all on this. So I might just say, Taryn there, would you like to have a quick introduction, say hello?
Yeah, sure. Just a quick question, Lorna. I'm not seeing the PowerPoint deck. Is it just me?
I can see it. Yep.
Oh, okay. Don't know what's going on my side. Anyway, okay. So yeah, so I'm Taryn Schiller. I started working with Avaya in September this year, based here in Galway, and have worked within the local tech industry here in Ireland for the last 8 years. So I've worked with other companies like DXC, Hewlett Packard, and Neat Solutions. And then prior to that, I was in the UK and Ireland, working within IT and finance. Sorry, the UK and South Africa. Forgot that part. So thanks for joining us. Lorna, over to you.
Thanks, Taryn. So my name is Lorna Smith. Nice to meet you all. I am a solutions engineer working in Diligent. So if you're wondering who we are, we're going to be moving into the new building on the docks there in spring 2022. So really looking forward to that. And yeah, I've been working with the ITAG Digital Women's Forum for several years now, and I've worked in a couple of different companies in Galway. So I started in HP, then HPE, then DXC Technology, and then SmartBear, and now in Diligent. So nice to meet you all. And then Taryn, would you like to run through the agenda, or I can do it if your screen isn't showing?
Yeah, no, I think I'm getting my screen set up correctly now. So yeah, today our agenda is we'll just give a brief overview of our program again. This is our second last session, as Lorna's mentioned. So we'll talk you through what you can expect today and in the next session as well. And yeah, then we'll have our speakers, Jackie and Breda, taking us through the session today, which is all about attention. And then we'll leave time at the end for a Q&A with Jackie and Breda.
Great. Okay, so for those of you who are joining the program for the first time today, this is just a quick overview of what the program is about. And as you can see there, it's been running bi-weekly and we're finishing up on December 1st. Now, these sessions have been recorded and we have a YouTube channel with these available. So don't worry if you're just joining, you will be able to catch up on the previous sessions. And you can see there on the slide today, we're focusing on attention with the ladies here, Breda and Jackie. And if you want to register for the last session as well, you can do that through the website on ITAG. And I think Taryn has the link there, she can pop it in there. So if you're interested in joining for the last session, you can register using the link. Okay, without further ado, I have the pleasure of introducing our speakers. So we have Jackie McGovern and Breda Kine, who established their company MindEdge in 2020 to meet the growing demand for mental health training programs in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. With over 30 years of shared experience in frontline mental health services and well-being and growth mindset training in the education sector, Jackie and Breda both share a passion to promote positive mental health using an accessible and practical approach. MindEdge offers a broad range of workplace wellness courses and modules that are live, interactive, and based on the latest neuroscience research. In today's attention session, we are going to gain an understanding of the science of attention. We'll be able to identify what distracts you and also how you can maximize your productivity and your creativity through reducing distractions and getting into a state of flow. So really looking forward to this. And on that note, welcome Breda and Jackie.
Thank you, Lorna.
Thank you, Lorna. And for those of you who were paying attention, I just noticed I'm wearing the same shirt I was in the photo there, which was not intentional, but I just noticed it. So hello and welcome to Attention Management, everyone. My name is Breda Kine, and together with my colleague Jackie McGovern, who will co-facilitate the session, we make up Minded Training. And we are really delighted to be here with you today as part of ITAG's Level Up Work and Wellness Programme. So before we begin, just a tiny bit of housekeeping. Can I ask that you put your screen either on speaker view or you pin myself and Jackie, as we'll be alternating who facilitates the session. If you're not familiar with Zoom, you can do the pin part by pinning the clicking the three dots on the top right-hand side of your screens. If you could mute your mic, we'd also be grateful. And for those of you who feel comfortable to do so, we would be beyond delighted if you were willing to share your video. So you can ask questions at any time in the chat throughout the session, and we'll make sure that whoever isn't speaking answers them in real time. And we'll leave some time at the end for some Q&A, hopefully. So we're here today to talk to you about attention management. Now, simply put, attention management is about using techniques and strategies to intentionally choose where we place the focus of our attention. It's about how we manage our internal and external distractions so that we can stay focused and be a little more productive. Now, before we launch into the workshop content, I want to do a quick warm-up challenge to see if you're ready to learn about attention. There's not going to be live sharing here, so don't let anybody jump off at the sound of interaction. I'm going to ask you to try as best you can not to look at your phone notifications or check your email for the next hour, okay? So let the thoughts settle and try not to panic, but I want you to quickly reflect on how often you think you were going to feel an impulse or an urge to check your phone, your email, or any of your notifications in the next hour. And we're going to pull up a little anonymous poll now to share how often you think you're going to feel that urge to check, okay? So I'm going to pull up a poll and I'm going to launch it. Let me know if you can see it. How many times do you think you will be tempted to check your phone or email in the next hour? So we'll just give a few seconds for everyone to answer.
Very honest people, Breda.
Very honest.
Yeah, I can see quite a few say 5 to 10 times and more than 15 times. So you're very honest, whoever's owning up to that.
Okay. So we'll just wait for one more person to add. People are being really honest. I love this. Great. So now I'm going to end the poll and I'm going to share the results. So can you all see that? So around a quarter of you think that you're going to feel the impulse to check your phone or your email around 1 to 5 times in the next hour, which is actually very controlled. 1 to 5 times in an hour is actually very controlled. Around half of you think 5 to 10 times. You're going to feel that urge or impulse to check around 5 to 10 times. And then one person said, you know what, I'm going to want to check it even more, 10 to 15 times, okay? So what I want you to do now, just going to end that poll. Is it gone?
I can still see it, Breda.
Is it gone now?
No, I'll see if I can close it here. Is that gone? Can anybody give us a thumbs up? Can you see it or not? You can see it? No, great, no. We're good.
Great. So part 2 of the experiment is about developing self-awareness. Everything in life is about developing self-awareness. So without judgment, I just want you old style to grab a piece of paper and pen. You don't need your phone to mark this down. So grab a piece of paper and pen, and I want you to draw a line or a dot or anything at all, just to mark down every time in the next hour your brain draws your attention away from this session and prompts you to check your phone, your notifications, or your emails. I don't want you to judge the impulse. I want you to try not to act on it, but I just want you to mark it down as part of an experiment. So mark down every time you feel the urge to check. Okay, we'll check in on that again later. So at Minded, we believe that committing to the how of self-care is much easier when we first understand how our minds work. So I'm going to start by introducing you to the science of distraction and explain why, despite our best efforts, our focus is frequently pulled away from whatever task we may be working on. Why is it, as humans, we are so easily distracted? Well, there are a few reasons for that. And I think, first of all, it's important that we acknowledge that working life has changed hugely for most of us over what's now almost 2 years due to the COVID-19 pandemic, with many of us still working remotely, some if not all of the time. And under new guidelines, even if you were lucky enough to get back into the office, you'll be asked to work from home again by the end of this week. So it's understandable that when we are trying to carry out both work and home life under the same roof 24/7, lines will naturally become blurred, and it's normal to become distracted by competing tasks and pressures. But secondly, and here I think is where we can all exhale and give ourselves a little bit of a break. As humans, we are biologically wired to be distracted. Our attraction to distraction, as Jackie and I call it, is quite literally hardwired into our brain. So why is that? Well, this distractibility that we all possess is linked to the brain's #1 function, which is to ensure that we survive for as long as possible. So let's rewind a few million years. In primitive times, threat to our survival was a daily reality. So imagine just briefly for a moment that you were out on the savannah hunting and your brain needed to be attuned through your senses to react instantly to any sound, sight, smell, or movement that may signal danger from a predator. And as such, it needed to become highly sensitive to respond to any type of distraction, because the cause of that distraction could be dangerous, and failing to notice it could quite literally have been the difference between life and death. Now, our brains have hugely evolved since then, but this primitive wiring remains intact as part of our innate survival mechanism. And it's hugely useful to keep us safe from real physical danger. For example, if you're about to walk in front of oncoming traffic. But in the day-to-day of the modern world, it's outdated and can far too frequently result in our attention being pulled away time and again from the task in hand. So have a look at this simple diagram here. The logical reasoning part of the brain is called the cortex, and it's represented in this image by the rider, which is steering the horse, which represents our mammalian or midbrain, where most of our learning and memory happens. And underneath those, you will see our reptilian brain, the amygdala, which is represented by the crocodile here. And this is where our survival wiring resides. So in the diagram on the left, you will see when we are calm and focused, the cortex, the executive function of our brain, is in charge, and we can function and we can perform well. Then on the right, you will see what happens when the reptilian brain is triggered by threat and we go into survival mode, or let's call it stress. Under pressure, you will see that the horse bolts and the rider shrinks. In this case, our emotions are in charge. And when we are in this reactive state, our capacity to focus and pay attention diminishes, as access to the more logical parts of our brain is restricted. Now, interesting, the brain reacts the same to perceived threat as it does to real threat. So you will experience the same instant physiological response to an aggressive email from a colleague as you will to almost walking in front of oncoming traffic. And this is why when we feel very stressed, we quite literally cannot think straight, we are easily distracted, and we frequently underperform. So if we now put this wiring that we have into the context of the past 22 months of pandemic living, where our stress response mechanism has been elevated to an unprecedented level, and we've had limited access to our normal stress relievers, socializing, connecting, gyms, hairdressers, freedom of movement. And even when these came back to us, we could never fully trust that they weren't going to get pulled away again. So it's no wonder that this our distractibility levels have skyrocketed. But it's not just things that put us under pressure that cause us to lose focus. So let's dig a little bit deeper into the science of distraction and take a look at something else, which is called our novelty bias. So as part of the inbuilt survival mechanism that we just looked at, our brain doesn't just notice what's threatening and draws our attention away there, but it also rewards us for spotting anything new, pleasurable, or interesting. And this we can call our attraction to distraction. So you may be surprised, I know I was when I read it, that our brain is constantly scanning our environment underneath our conscious awareness approximately 5 times every second, looking for signs or threat or reward. So 5 times every second, our brain is looking for signs that we're safe. If it detects threat, the stress hormones adrenaline and cortisol are released and you are mobilized for fight, flight, or freeze, which we saw in the previous image with the crocodile. However, if your brain detects something pleasurable, new, or interesting, the brain rewards you by releasing the hormone dopamine, and dopamine makes you feel good. But the problem with dopamine is that it's quite addictive. So the more of it we get, the more of it we want. And our impulse tends to be to repeat the action that triggered the initial dopamine release. So the cycle of dopamine can become quite addictive. And I'll show you an example here in this really simple dopamine reward loop diagram. So imagine your phone pings. So you pick it up, you receive a nice message or a like, your dopamine increases. And so you feel happy for a few minutes. But then the dopamine isn't going to stay there forever. So it eventually decreases. But then you want that feeling again. So you pick up your phone, dopamine increases, etc. You get the idea, rinse and repeat, and round the merry-go-round we go. Now, this is not a beware of technology speech, because I realize that would be a rather foolish soapbox to preach from to a group of people who work in the tech sector. But it's more be aware that our brain rewards us with dopamine hits for being distracted. And technology, with all its likes and shares and ping alerts, is an easy source of that feel-good chemical response. Now, on average, we get around 63 notifications a day. We receive 90 emails, write 40, switch tasks every 3 minutes. And every time we task switch, we lose focus. And Jackie's going to explain that in a little while. So it's no wonder that by the end of the day, we frequently find ourselves feeling really drained and exhausted. So on to our energy supply that drains so easily. I love this diagram from the book Essentialism by Greg McKeown. Jackie's going to pop the name of that in chat, but we're also going to give you a handout at the end of this session, which will have a lot of these books and tips listed on it. It's a nice reminder that our energy supplies are not limitless, but nor is our capacity to pay attention. They're both limited resources. So attention management is about what actions we choose to take, and they can be small actions that we choose to take to try to override that innate distractibility we all inherit as part of our primitive brain. If we do nothing, and again, that's a choice, if we do nothing and continue to be pulled away by this natural biological impulsivity, we will find ourselves depleted quite quickly and deflated quite regularly by having achieved less than we set out at the start of our day or week. So does anyone want to give a thumbs up or a little emoji if you can relate to that feeling of giving it your all week, but at the end of the week feeling deflated or depleted, that you've worked really hard but you haven't quite achieved what you wanted to? Are we seeing messages come in there, Jackie?
Loads of thumbs up there.
Yeah, and you look back and you go, oh my God, geez, I have worked so hard this week and I didn't get half done that I wanted to do. And this is where attention management comes into its own, you know, paying that little bit attention, that little bit extra to tools that help you focus your attention can give you so much back in terms of productivity. So there are lots of simple actions we can take that override that impulsivity with practice and commitment to making small changes to our working day. And we're going to look at these shortly. But first of all, in traditional mind-led style, we just love the science. Now that you understand more about the science of distraction, Jackie is going to delve a little bit deeper into the science and help you take a look at the science of attention.
Thanks, Breda. Can everyone see me okay and see my screen? We're all good? I'm seeing some nods there, so we're ready to go. Great. So for anyone who joined after we started, I'm Jackie on the other half of MindEd. So now we know what distraction is about, and we also know that biology doesn't always work in our favor. The next step is to get a better understanding of how our attention works so that we can make better choices and feel more productive. Nir Eyal, in his book Indistractable, which I have here, it's a yellow cover, really recommend it, talks about moving along a spectrum from distraction to traction. So you can see the spectrum there by taking actions that move us in the right direction towards what we really want. Most of us already use a lot of time management strategies to help with this. So I'd just like you to take a minute to very quickly type in the chat 2 or 3 time management strategies that you already use. So some people use diaries, some people use to-do lists. There's lots of different ways that people try to manage their time.
Calendar and to-do lists, calendar and Outlook, lists. I'm a big fan of lists. Yeah, blocking calendars. There's something here called Jira. Is it Jira? It's new to me.
Yeah, it's a tool that we use in Agile project management. So,
Okay.
yeah.
I'm going to have to look into that. That sounds interesting. There are lots of calendars and to-do lists I see. So we can see that there are plenty of strategies that we already invest in, but somehow they're not really getting us the results we want. And we want to understand today why that is, why not. Now, this picture might freak you out a little bit. Here's one theory. This is what a 90-year life looks like in months. If you're lucky enough to live to 90, you get exactly 1,080 months to live, or 4,680 weeks. It doesn't seem like a whole lot when you look at it like this. Now, I'm not trying to create any panic. I think we're already acutely aware that time is precious and that it's a limited resource and that we all want to spend it wisely. So during work time, we want to be productive and we want to make a valuable contribution in our field. And during home time, we want to enjoy quality time with family and friends, doing activities we enjoy and recharging our batteries. Partly due to the always on information age, and then of course exacerbated by the pandemic, where work and life boundaries have become really blurred, it's no surprise that many of us feel there isn't enough balance anymore. So even before the pandemic, this was an issue. Deloitte did a survey in 2018 and found that more than 93% of Irish adults own a smartphone and check it roughly 55 times a day. We're connected globally across time zones and we're instantly contactable. So these speedy communication pathways bring expectations of near instant responses. We operate in an always on world and it can feel very overwhelming. So time management skills like scheduling, planning, goal setting and prioritizing tasks are very useful and work really well when time is interrupted and when all aspects of our day go according to plan, but how often does that really happen? So I'm just going to run a little poll now and see what you think. Sorry, my screens are getting a little mixed up here. Okay. So I'm still getting the other poll there, Breda. I think the second poll is here. Second, okay. Now, can you see that? Everyone see that? Okay, perfect. So the question is, I stick to my schedule, meet my targets, and feel satisfied at the end of each day that I've achieved everything I wanted to achieve within the allocated time frame. So does that happen? Never, rarely, sometimes, often, or always? How are we doing there, Breda?
So we've got 14 in, so you can probably end the poll and share it.
Yeah, that's perfect. Okay. Now, so you can see that 43% of you said sometimes, 29% said rarely, 21% said often. Well done, you guys. And 7% said never. That's probably the category that I would be falling into most of the time. So you're very honest. Thanks for doing that. Is that still showing there? Do I need to close that, Breda? Let's see. Can you close that, Breda, for me?
I've closed. I can't see it anymore.
Okay, that's perfect. So what we have learned here is that time management is limited. How intentionally we use the time we have is actually much more important than the amount of time we have. And this is where attention management comes in. So this is about how we use our attention, this section. So I want to just briefly explain how your attention works. There are actually a few different types of attention, and I'm going to touch on the main 4. But what you really need to know is that your attention works like a spotlight and has a limited focus range. So we select what we want to focus on, and this is where we direct our attention. And that's called selective attention. And with selective attention, we often miss other things going on in the background. Now that can help us to actually understand how conflict arises and explains how people can have very different perspectives about the same thing. So they quite simply have their spotlights of attention directed to other details that we're less aware of. So we're going to have a little bit of fun with this. I'm going to show you what I'm talking about with this little video clip. It's a murder mystery whodunit, and so you need to pay close attention. Are you ready?
I want to turn up your volume there, Jackie. Can you hear it, Jackie?
Yeah.
Okay. It's
No.
I don't know if anyone else can hear it. I'm struggling.
Okay, I have it turned up to max.
No, we can't hear it.
No.
Can't hear it. Breda, do you want to try running it from your Zoom and see if it's any better?
Sure.
I'll just turn off my screen for a minute. Sorry, guys. We did do a check earlier and it worked. There we go. We can hear that, Breda.
Clearly, somebody in this room murdered Lord Smythe, who, at precisely 3:34 this afternoon, was brutally bludgeoned to death with a blunt instrument. I want each of you to tell me your whereabouts at precisely the time that this dastardly deed took place.
I was polishing the brass in the master bedroom.
I was buttering his lordship's scones below stairs, sir.
Why, I was planting my petunias in the potting shed.
Constable, arrest Lady Smythe.
But how did you know?
Madam, as any horticulturist will tell you, one does not plant petunias until May is out. Take her away.
That's right, madam.
It's just a matter of observation. The real question is, how observant were you? Action. Clearly, somebody in this room murdered Lord Smythe, who, at precisely 3:34 this afternoon, was brutally bludgeoned to death with a blunt instrument. I want each of you to tell me your whereabouts at precisely the time that this dastardly deed took place.
I was polishing the brass in the master bedroom.
I was buttering his lordship's scones below stairs, sir.
Why, I was planting my petunias in the potting shed.
Constable, arrest Lady Smythe.
Thanks, Breda, for sharing that. So did you enjoy that? You can put in the chat if you spotted any of the changes in the first clip. Did anyone notice all 21? Give me a thumbs up if you did. I'll be amazed if you did, because it's pretty much impossible to catch them all. Karen said a couple, yeah. So even if you watch it over and over, you won't spot everything. So as you can see now, even when you're closely watching something, you can miss an awful lot of stuff in the background. So the second type of attention is sustained attention. And this is when we shine our attention spotlight on one task or activity for a sustained amount of time. So examples of this are watching a movie, reading a book, or playing a game of chess. So what about multitasking then? Because that's everybody's question. Well, the truth is this: we can multitask a little, but the best we can do is divide our attention between two things using two different channels. So you are hopefully looking at me on screen and listening to my voice at the same time. And this brings us to the third type of attention, which is divided attention, which is where we stretch our range of attention to attend to two different stimuli at the same time. But it's only really possible to divide attention when the information is coming through two different sources. So visual and audio, for example. So you can listen to music while you're running, or you can look for signposts while you're driving, and so on. It's very limited, and it only really works for activities that rely heavily on autopilot or muscle memory, or that are passive, like listening to music. So you can't, for example, read a book and write a book at the same time, or you can't do two mathematical sums at exactly the same time. So what we usually consider multitasking is actually alternating attention, which is the fourth and the last type. And this is where we operate most of the time. So that involves shifting our spotlight of attention from one task to another and back very quickly. And even though it's normal for most of us, it's really not very efficient or productive. And here's why. So I want you to imagine you sit down at your desk at 9 in the morning, determined to focus on one specific task that you want to complete in the next 2 hours. You open your computer and your email box flashes telling you you have 8 new emails. Better check those just before you get started to avoid being distracted later on. One email is an urgent one from a colleague who needs a document from you before they attend a meeting at 10 o'clock. It takes you a few minutes to find the document you need, and before you know it, it's 9:15. As you click send on that email, you see another one that you meant to respond to yesterday. Okay, better answer that one too. You're now behind schedule, but a cup of coffee will help you get focused. So 1 cup of coffee later and you get down to the task. 15 minutes later, the phone rings. It's your manager, so it has to be important. It turns into a 5-minute call that leaves you with 2 more pressing tasks. Before you know it, it's 11 a.m. You have extra tasks to do and you've made very little progress on the one thing that you had planned to do. Hands up if you can relate to this. That sound familiar? I see some hands coming up. Yeah, I think that affects us all. Okay, so lots of hands coming up there. We see that getting sidetracked is a really common experience for most of us. There are also metabolic costs to shifting attention. Task switching, which is really what we're doing when we're multitasking, causes our brain to produce the stress hormone cortisol. And this can result in us feeling irritable, anxious, and sometimes overwhelmed. So the brain works a little bit like a car engine, and we burn more fuel the more we stop, start, and change gears. Except instead of petrol or diesel, task switching burns oxygenated glucose. So if you switch back and forth between tasks often enough, you are likely to end up feeling disoriented or exhausted. A University of California Irvine study claims that it takes, on average, 23 minutes and 15 seconds for the brain to get fully back on task after a diversion or distraction. That's quite a long time, 23 minutes and 15 seconds on average. So if we learn new information while we're multitasking, the information can even get sent to the wrong part of the brain. So while task switching only takes 1/10 of a second, research is showing that it can result in up to 40% productivity loss if you do it a lot of times during the day. The more complex the tasks are, the longer it takes the brain to switch and the higher the likelihood of errors. So we're going to fly on now to multitasking in a broader sense. So it's really like driving a car towards a destination, but constantly braking and changing gears due to roadworks, detours, and traffic jams. So every distraction is like a roadwork or a diversion. It takes a lot longer to get to where we want to go. It's really frustrating and it uses up a lot more fuel and energy. Now, thankfully, there are lots of different attention management strategies that can help us with this problem. I'm going to hand you back to Breda now so that she can share some of the best ones that we've come across.
Thank you, Jackie. So for the purpose of today, we've divided our attention management techniques into 2. Managing digital distractions and managing other distractions. So let's start with managing digital distractions. Now we're going to give you a list of the tips that we explain in the next 2 slides by email after the call. So don't worry about writing them down. Just maybe listen and see, do any of them sound reasonable or resonate with you as something that you could try? So we start with digital distractions. So as tech professionals, you will all be aware of the attention economy and how our attention is such a valuable resource that an entire economy has developed with the goal of capturing it for profitability. And many businesses use their knowledge of how our attention works to compete for it in systematic ways. For example, we've all heard of the use of algorithms in social media feeds. So it's down to us how we manage that and how we use our knowledge of how our attention and distraction works to try and minimize that influence. So here are some ways that you can try to do that. So when you're working on your laptop, use full screen mode and close the other tabs. And you can do this for specific amounts of time so that you don't miss anything important. It's really difficult if lots of tabs are open, not to give in to the urge to keep checking and flicking over and back between them. Another thing you can do is to delete unnecessary apps and mute phone notifications apart from important ones. I know this takes a bit of time and investment, but it really is worth it for the benefits. Almost every app comes with default settings that enable all notifications. And most people, myself included, never change their default notification settings. In terms of emails then, right, one of the best quotes we read in our research about attention was, emails are the best delivery system of other people's agendas. So one way around this is to have a passive email account. And it might mean only, depending on your role at work, obviously, only checking your email maximum 5 times a day at specific times. And you put a note on the bottom of your emails informing recipients of the times you check email and request that they call you if they need to discuss something urgent. Now, research shows that people think much more carefully about calling than emailing, so they're less likely to disturb you with a call unless it's genuinely important. And a 2018 study in the US showed that those who checked emails 3 to 5 times a day were far less stressed and exhausted than those who replied to a constant drip feed throughout the day. And another simple tool with emails is, if you want fewer emails, you should probably send fewer emails. In terms of deep focus work, there are deep focus apps that you can readily get, and a lot of them are free, that can really help you to zone out from tech distractions for a limited time period. So one of Jackie's favorites is one called Forest, and another good free one is called Quality Time, and they allow you to schedule times in the day when the apps that you choose are muted. Another important one in terms of calls, if you want to do deep work, only answer calls that are important and then let everyone else wait. You can put your phone on Do Not Disturb, and you can add whatever phone numbers are important to you. For example, if you have kids, maybe the school phone number, parents, particular work colleagues that always need to get hold of you. You can put those phone numbers into the favorites on your phone. And then if those people phone, they will override the Do Not Disturb function and the phone will ring. So everyone else, you know, if they're in your favorites and you put it on to Do Not Disturb, anyone in your favorites will call, but anybody else, the phone won't ring. And then at the end of each day, you can decide on the top 3 things you want to focus on for the next day. It's really, really powerful if you do those 3 things first, even if you don't want to, and you will most likely not want to. But once you complete those first 3 tasks, you should get a dopamine hit. And that dopamine hit will then increase your sense of motivation and reward, and then you can move on to less important tasks. And generally then you will tend to be more productive. If you get the hard stuff out of the way first, you get the hormone hit of dopamine, and then you can fly through the rest. Well, fly through may be an exaggeration, but you're going to be much more motivated to do the rest. Now, other distractions. Well, would you be surprised to learn that 90% of distractions are in fact not digital, and a huge amount of our distractions are caused by our own internal monologue. And I wish I had an off button for that, but unfortunately we don't. But these are some tips that research show can help with that internal monologue. So minimize decisions. Okay, this might be just really simple things like saving yourself a few minutes every morning by choosing clothes the night before, or working on a better system of delegation for less important decisions within your team. And some of these things might seem trivial, but research shows that every micro decision drains energy. Jackie said earlier that every time our attention is pulled away, we can lose up to 40% productivity in a day. So an accumulation of lots of micro decisions at the busiest times of your day can be really, really draining and leads to a lack of productivity. Another option for that internal monologue is thought capturing. It helps with internal noise. It's simply writing down things that pop into your head while you're working on something else, so that you can attend to them later when you've completed an existing task. So having a notebook and a pen just to jot things down as they pop in, but then parking them until you're ready to deal with them, can be really useful in freeing up headspace. Task batching is grouping similar tasks and activities and setting aside time to do them. So for example, if you set aside an hour a day for phone calls, or on a personal level, that might mean spending a half day or a day every 2 to 4 weeks cooking meals for freezing to reduce daily shoppings, daily decisions, and cooking time. Deep work is quiet, uninterrupted time to work on a particular task that requires focus. So setting aside a few hours in your week to do deep work is really helpful. And a lot of companies now are introducing these deep work days as they see the value of this, like a no Zoom Tuesday or other such initiatives. And then if you couple that up with deep work apps like Forest, it can really help you stick to that allocated deep work time. And then taking regular mind breaks allows our minds to stay focused for longer. Movement breaks are particularly important. So if you can find a way that you set an alarm to get up and move for 5 minutes once an hour, if possible, it will pay you back in dividends when it comes to being able to focus. We've all heard of the expression, we think better on our feet, but there's real scientific value to that. When we move, our oxygen levels increase and we feel more awake and alert. Both of these are essential qualities for being able to focus, pay attention, and be productive. And then finally, urge surfing. So our primitive biological urge and impulse to be distracted is going nowhere fast. So when it arises, which will primarily be out of habit and that innate biological wiring, notice it and then tell yourself that you will give into it in 10 minutes. Very often in 10 minutes, the urge has passed. Sometimes visual cues are really helpful for that. Not everyone is visual, but I'm a real visual learner. This comes into use a lot. I remember the last time we ran attention management with iTag, loads of people said, where did you get that thing? They thought useful to have beside their desk. It's just one of those gel timers and it takes around 10 minutes for it to run through. But when you just have that urge, that biological urge to just be distracted, just turn it upside down and leave it by your desk and tell yourself, well, when that runs through, I'll give into it. And very often the urge has passed by the time the timer has run out too.
I think I need one of those for when I feel tempted to have a bit of chocolate, Breda.
Yeah, something. It can be really helpful. And it started to move now. It's like a meditation thing. It's like a little trance magnet. So this is just a gentle reminder that we can have all the tools and knowledge in the world, but if we don't use them, nothing will change. I hope, can you see that image well there, Jackie?
Yes, I can see that.
If we always do what we've always done, we will always get what we've always got. The brain loves stability. It loves the status quo. And what we are familiar with seems safe, and the brain loves safety. So old habits die hard is true for a reason. If we want to experience change, we have to make changes, and there's no shortcut to it. We have to make a choice to change our habits. Now, we don't want anything we suggest to appear burdensome, and we're not into well-being becoming workload, but we would suggest that you pick just one or two, or at most 3 of the strategies we've suggested, the ones that seem realistically manageable to you, and just try them out, because often it's small changes that we repeat over time that then form our new habits. So we're going to run another poll here, and we're going to see of all of the different strategies.
Can you see that? Okay.
Can people see that?
Yeah.
Now you might need to scroll down. I think there were around 10 there, so you might have to scroll up and down to see them all. This is a multi-choice, so you can choose as many as you want. What strategies could you try to minimize distractions and improve focus? So you've got full screen mode, muting notifications, passive email, deep focus app, 3 things on your list, decision minimalism, thought capturing, task batching, scheduling deep work time, and allowing breaks for movement or urge surfing. Now, there's a lot there for people to read, so we're going to give people another minute to.
Yeah, results are still coming in there.
Yeah.
It might be good as well to try something new. I'm sure some of you use some of these already, but maybe to try something that you weren't familiar with or that you haven't tried before would be great.
Okay, I'm going to share that poll.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to share the results. Can you all see that?
I think okay, that's fine.
So it looks like everyone's going to try something. Everyone's going to try something, and everything's going to get tries. This is great. Everyone's going to have fantastic attention in a week's time. But it's just about choosing 1 or 2 that works for you. It's not meant to become workload. You know, it's just about, so much of what we do every day is just habitual. But just because we do it all the time doesn't make it right. And it's about consciously choosing to just shift something, to change something, and to try to do something differently with intention to see if it can help you to to kind of tame in that distractibility that we all have. Now, interestingly here, one of the most popular ones is allowing time for movement or urge surfing. So we might actually try that before we move into the next section. Jackie, tell me if that's gone now.
Yeah, I can still see it, but maybe because I'm co-host.
Yeah.
Is that okay? It's gone.
Great. Okay. So the last thing I'd like to say is mental health is a lot like physical health. Okay. It takes commitment. Gym membership alone will not result in a six-pack if you don't get through the door and do the work. And it's very much the same with mental health. Nothing changes if nothing changes. And I love this photo Jackie found of the guy looking over the wall with around 100 ladders, and he still can't see over the wall. You know, he has all these ladders, but he's not using them correctly. And just one ladder used effectively would do the job just fine. So just pick one or two of those techniques that you can try. Now, Jackie's going to explain the concept of flow to you in a moment, which is the nirvana and next level of attention management. But before she does that, I'd love to just put some of this science briefly into action. The most popular one of those things you said you try was movement breaks. Now, it was movement breaks or urge surfing. So I don't know what you were drawn to. Was it the urge surfing or the movement breaks? But we spend a lot of our time sitting down like this, hunched over a desk, lungs restricted by our sitting position, taking short, shallow breaths. But if we stand up and straighten our posture, we automatically open our rib cage. We give our lungs the space they need to take some deep breaths, and then that gives us more energy. So what I'm going to invite and challenge you all to do now is to step away from your computer. You can turn off your video if you prefer, but step away from your video. And for the next 30 seconds, just do something physical. Shake out your muscles, jump up and down, do some stretches, take some deep breaths, get the oxygen pumping, and then sit down again. Okay, Jackie, do you want to put a timer on?
Sure.
Or even 20 seconds, just everyone step up and step away.
I'm going to do my stretches here at my seat.
Should have played music. Next time we'll leave music.
Yeah, we might do that
music
next time.
next time.
I'm shaking out my hands.
All right, you're welcome to come back again if you like. Or maybe they won't.
They might have all gone off for a run.
Brilliant. Okay, so Jackie, now we are 10 to 1 because we had the intro as well. So we're going to let you fly through flow.
I am going to flow through flow, everybody. So I will keep going. So I definitely feeling more energized now. And I'm also really excited to tell you about flow. So earlier I mentioned that living with constant distractions is like driving down a road full of diversions or detours or roadworks and so forth, when you're braking and changing gears all the time. Without focus, it takes us a longer time to get to where we want to be. It's like trying to navigate the wilds of Connemara without a roadmap. So having good time and attention management skills provide us with a sat-nav. These skills help us to reduce diversions and avoid distractions, avoid dead ends, avoid traffic jams. They make it easier for us to get to where we need to go. But why stop there? When we researched attention management, we discovered that there's a whole other level of productivity called flow. So flow is literally the pinnacle of optimal performance. It's defined as a state of complete immersion in an activity where you have total focus to the extent that you lose track of time. Now, most of us have experienced it at some point or another. It's often referred to as being in the zone. In the flow state of mind, everything just seems easier. Thoughts come easier, our ideas come easier, our movements seem to flow. So I used to think that this was something that just was a rare occurrence that happened to me from time to time when I got super absorbed in something. But I now know that there's a whole load more to it. Research says that when we're in a state of flow, we're up to 500% more productive, 400% more creative, and it takes us half the time normally needed to learn things. So imagine if we just had one morning of flow a week, how productive we would be. We use less brain energy, we lose track of time and self, and we feel amazing. So if distracted living is driving down side roads without a map, and attention management is using a sat-nav to avoid delays and detours, flow is like driving on an empty motorway from A to B in sixth gear. How nice is that? So there are a lot of benefits to being in the state of flow. Stephen Kotler has done a huge amount of research into the neuroscience of flow, and he has several YouTube videos on this topic if you want to learn more. He discovered that flow is the only human state in which the brain gives you a super boost of 6 feel-good neurochemicals. Imagine that, all the feel-good chemicals working together to make your body and your brain operate in complete harmony. These 6 pleasure-inducing, performance-enhancing chemicals have a huge impact on creativity. So I'm just going to focus in here. Adrenaline amps up focus, boosting imaginative possibilities by helping us gather more information. Dopamine helps us to feel motivated. It improves our pattern recognition and our physical performance. Anandamide increases our lateral thinking, meaning it expands the size of the database searched by our pattern recognition system. Endorphins reduce pain and allow us to do things with less effort. Oxytocin lowers blood pressure and cortisol and makes us feel more connected. And serotonin helps to stabilize our mood and makes our cells communicate better. So all of these work together in total harmony in a flow state. Now, you might think that focusing on this level would make your brain hyperactive, but in fact, it's the complete opposite. An entire section of your prefrontal cortex, which is the horse rider in the brain image that Breda showed you earlier, actually becomes hypoactive. So this part of the brain temporarily deactivates, we lose some of our sense of ourself, including our inner critic, which then allows us to be more courageous and take more risks, and we lose our sense of time. So most of us will have experienced that. If we're doing something we really love, especially a physical activity, it's very easy to lose track of time. Our brain waves change frequency too. So normally while we're awake and active, we operate in beta waves. But in the flow state, we operate in slower alpha theta waves, which are usually associated with a deep meditative state. So flow is like a channel between the conscious and the subconscious mind. And in this channel, we process information at a much higher speed, and we pull together ideas from all parts of the brain, connecting memories, experiences, and new stimuli into creative action. It's absolutely incredible stuff. On top of this, we actually experience a sort of flow surplus or a flow hangover after the brain has been in this state. So not only are people more creative in flow, they also feel more creative the day after, suggesting that flow has extended benefits. The best thing of all is we can all experience flow, and we can even hack our brains into this state by doing certain things. So look at how we can get there. Here are a few things that we can do. Choose one task with a clear goal and allow yourself enough time to do it. Work at your own biological peak time if possible. So for some people, we'll all know ourselves. You might have better concentration early in the morning. For other people, it's late at night. So figure out what's your best time to work at, and that's the best time to do your deep work. Reduce all distractions and stimuli, both internal and external. And we've given you some ideas about that. We'll be giving you a handout at the end with more ideas. Challenge your skills. So the goal is about 5% harder than you think you're able for. So the challenge should be just beyond your skill level, but not so much that you feel anxious or overwhelmed. Choose a quiet place where you can have a block of uninterrupted concentration. Allow yourself to be creative and to take risks. Don't focus on perfection. So trying something new in flow can really bring surprising results. It sounds easy, and it genuinely is a little bit easier than you might think. Now, I tested it myself by scheduling deep work time on Friday mornings when I was doing research and working on developing MindEd courses. And I was honestly amazed at how much I got done in those blocks of times and how good I felt when I focused my energy on one thing. So I don't want you to take my word for it. I want you to try it out and experience it for yourself. You'll remember the ladder picture that Breda showed you. We've now given you a range of ladders to choose from, and we'd love you to climb up and look at the rewards over the wall. So that brings our attention management training to an end for today. We hope that you feel that it's just the beginning for you. If you put some of your new learning into practice, we're pretty confident that the hour you've just spent with us will pay itself back with interest in the form of productivity and creativity. Now, but before we finish up, I want to rerun that digital urge test poll to see how you all did. So maybe Breda, you could bring that up for us.
Okay, we'll see how the last one. How many times did you check? Was it more or less than you thought? We can't lose on this one. If you've checked loads of times, then the science is correct. If you didn't check as often as you thought, then we must have done an okay job because we held your attention. We can't lose with these scores. Okay, I'm going to end the poll and share the results. Right, Jackie, do you want to comment?
That's perfect. No, I think it's brilliant. A lot of people had predicted that they would look a lot more than they did. So I'm hoping that that's a good sign. So
yeah, absolutely.
I'm conscious of time and I don't want to keep you any longer than 2 o'clock. We're really grateful for your attention today. We hope that you enjoyed this workshop and that you have a better understanding of how your brain works and that maybe you've gathered some new practical tools for your toolkit that will benefit you personally and professionally as you navigate pandemic and beyond it. So we wanted to say thanks again to Dee for the invitation to present today and to Taryn and Lorna for their amazing support in the planning and their assistance. Rita and I are both really looking forward to running face-to-face courses again in the future. But in the meantime, if you enjoyed our training and our blend of science-based research and interactivity, or if you feel there are areas we could improve on, we'd be absolutely delighted if you could complete a 1-minute anonymous online survey that we'll put in the chat box. You can also follow us on Instagram and on LinkedIn if you'd like to keep up to date with all things relevant to today's topic and more workplace wellbeing ideas. We'll be sending you on a summary handout with lots of resources and books and videos to watch on this topic. So that's it, and I'll send that on to Taryn as well, so that if any of you miss it, she can send it on. So we'll stay online now for the next couple of minutes. We wanted to finish by 2. If any of you have questions, we'll be around for the next few minutes. And on that note, we wish you all the best and we hope you feel minded. Thank you.
Great, and thanks for that. So much great information in there, Jackie and Rita. Just a reminder before we do, if anyone wants to hang on, we can do a couple of questions and we will share links to the recording for this, and we'll share your contact details for Jackie and Brita if you do want to reach out to them directly. But just a reminder of our next session, which is in 2 weeks' time, the 1st of December. It's our last one of the series. So join us to stay passionately on your path. We'll put a bit more